Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2025 Harris Policy Innovation Challenge. I'm Ethan Buender de Mesquita. I'm the Dean of the Harris School, and I'm delighted to welcome you. This is one of my favorite events of the year. It's only the second time we're doing it, but I liked it last year anyway. I like it because it really embodies what we're trying to do here. It's an opportunity for our students to do two really important things. One is spend a year learning, thinking, analyzing in a really serious and rigorous way, but also at the same time work on a real live policy challenge in our community, learn about local context, make a contribution to the civic environment in which we all live, work. It really embodies the Harris mission of both doing serious, rigorous work on policy and being part of a thriving city, part of our community, and taking impact in the real world as seriously as possible. So I want to start by recognizing our student teams. They've done incredible work. Participating in the Policy Innovation Challenge is no small deal in the midst of your studies. These are all students who are doing tons of difficult coursework, and at the same time, they are going to a seminar, they are working on a huge project, they are devoting time that they could be spending doing problem sets about something else. So it's amazing to see so many teams having participated. We had over 20 teams from across the university participate this year, and really excited to see the four proposals that emerged from our leading teams. I also want to thank the Mansueto Institute and my friend and colleague, Professor Chris Berry. The Mansueto Institute partnered with the Harris School this year. It's a wonderful thing. The Policy Innovation Challenge is really dedicated not only to providing a sort of a hands-on applied learning experience for policy students and other students around the university, but to doing it in the context of the great city in which we live, to really being a civic partner with the city, to being citizens of the city. The Mansueto Institute is, I think, by any standards, the most interesting place in the world thinking about the future of thriving cities in a really serious-minded, interdisciplinary way. And so to be able to partner with them and partner with Chris in particular is a wonderful thing for the Harris School, for the challenge. I also want to thank our colleague, Professor Justin Marlowe, the director of the Center for Municipal Finance here at the Harris School, who this year and last took on the heroic task of leading this project, leading the Innovation Challenge, shepherding the students through the process, building up the seminar, helping bring our alumni community together to support, to coach, to mentor. Justin does just amazing work in everything he does. We couldn't have made it happen without him. Okay, so we're gonna get started. The idea of the challenge is every year we take up a different theme, some pressing local concern for Chicago that demands innovative thinking, rigorous analysis, new creativity, and we put that question to teams of students. This year the question was, what can Chicago do over the next 3 years to create a thriving downtown for the next 20 years? It's a question that speaks to the heart of urban policy today. Here in Chicago, but across the country and around the world, we are grappling with the question of what is the future of downtowns? How do we think about having thriving downtowns in a post-COVID world? It's an immensely deep problem. It's a problem of pressing concern right now. It is a problem we will be grappling with for a long time to come. So I think we should be excited to hear about creative new ideas about this. I know you're going to be impressed by what our teams have come up with. Thoughtful, rigorous, innovative, practical ideas in the best Harris tradition. So thank you again for being here. Thank you to our alumni and other partners around the city who have supported the team, supported the school. And now I'm going to bring up Justin and Chris to get us going.
Well, thank you very much, Ethan. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. I'm Justin Marlowe. For those of you who I don't know, and have, as was mentioned, have the pleasure of serving as a research professor and as director of our Center for Municipal Finance. And you're going to hear a little bit more from Professor Berry in just a little bit, who again directs the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation. It's been a real pleasure to have the chance to work together, to put all of this together, and a wonderful chance to spent quality time with all of our students who have participated in the challenge. So let me make a couple of remarks here just to get things started. Let me first say something about where we hope to end up today. Of course, we all hope that you leave with some new ideas about what downtown Chicago is and what it can be. But far more important, we hope that you see our students in action, and that after you see them in action, you, like those of us who are fortunate to work here at the Harris School, will leave a bit more hopeful about Chicago's future, precisely because that future is in the hands of such talented, thoughtful, and dedicated students. We also want to first and foremost say thanks to Ethan for his tireless support of the challenge and for his commitment to the Harris student experience. The challenge represents, as he said, the best of Harris, our students working on a complex real-world problem, applying all of their cutting-edge analytical skills, and doing it all in real time as that problem evolves, which has very much been the case with downtown Chicago throughout the past 6 months as we've been working through this. But to create that kind of experience for students takes support from the top down. And for that, we have Ethan to thank. Thank you so much for your ongoing support for everything that we've done with the challenge. Our goal for the challenge is really simple, and that goal is this: to give the people with the most at stake in the future of downtown, the next generation of taxpayers, business owners, civic leaders, policy experts, an opportunity to have their voices heard. And indeed, they seized that opportunity. The 4 presentations you'll hear today are the final product of more than 6 months of work from 90 students. These students reviewed thousands of pages of documents, heard from 8 different subject matter experts on everything from property tax assessment to commercial real estate valuation to crime prevention strategies and so much more. They analyzed reams of data, they interviewed countless stakeholders, and generally stayed at it for the better part of 6 months. They also spent hours and hours and hours with their mentors, a wonderful group of Harris alums, many of whom are here today. All of the teams that submitted proposals worked under the guidance of one of these wonderful mentors who helped them to understand the context, helped them refine their ideas, helped them practice presenting their ideas. The mentors are a very, very important part of this process, and our alums showed out, as the kids say, to make the experience as good as it could be for all of our teams. The 4 teams you'll hear from today also survived a rigorous first round review from a group of 7 seasoned public policy professionals, all of whom Harris alums, who gave them lots of feedback and gave us a lot of feedback in thinking about who the top 4 teams would be. So in short, what you'll see tonight is the end of a long, arduous, and sometimes unpredictable, but always rewarding journey for the students. And of course, we hope it's just the first time that they apply their skills, their talents, and dedication to one of these crucial public policy issues of the moment. One quick housekeeping announcement I should make too. After the students have done their presentations, we'll have an opportunity for Q&A with all of you, the audience. There's a QR code over here. So if you're interested in submitting a question for our students during the audience Q&A, again, which will come a little later, check out that QR code and be sure to submit a question for them. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Professor Chris Berry, who will introduce our judges and get us going. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. As Ethan and Justin said, I direct the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation, and innovation should begin at home. And home is here in Chicago, and here for me at the Harris School. And so I'm delighted to be here. And having Mansueto join the Policy Challenge is also consistent with my high-level strategy of attaching our name to already successful things that other people have been doing. So I appreciate that opportunity. But my job here is to introduce the judges, and seeing you all sitting here at this table, I feel the room has the vibe of a disappointingly unsalacious reality TV show finale. But it will be exciting nonetheless. So let me just start here. We have, I'd like to introduce and thank all the judges. Phil Clement, CEO of World Business Chicago, which is Chicago's principal public-private economic development agency. We're also proud that Phil, as several others, are Harris alums. Next, we have Michael Fashnacht. I hope I got your name close to right. President of the Chicagoland region for Clayco, and also its first Chief Growth Officer. And Clayco is a full-service brokerage, architecture, engineering, and construction firm that's focused on commercial real estate around the world. We have Sasha Ann Simons, host of WBEZ's Reset, which is on NPR, and a career journalist whose credits include a regional Edward R. Murrow Award. We have Beth Swanson, CEO of A Better Chicago, a philanthropy focused on helping children escape poverty. We're also proud to call Beth a Harris alum. And we have David Wells, an independent director, advisor, and investor to many different startups and nonprofits who also served as CFO for Netflix. We're also proud to call David a Harris alum. I think we should just call them all Harris alums. Finally, Danny Wirtz of the Wirtz Corporation, a diversified holdings corporation that includes, as you may know, and amongst many other ventures, the Chicago Blackhawks. So thank you to the judges for being here. We really appreciate your time and contributions. And without further ado, let's get this going. Team one, come to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Krista Brown, and I'm here with my teammate Samantha Anderson, as well as our other team members, Ashton Mayo Beavers and Uchenna Afrajebe. We are Team One, and our proposal is activating the Cultural Mile by prioritizing two of Chicago's existing assets, culture and connection. Our proposal is focused around the Cultural Mile, which is a span of Michigan Avenue between the Chicago River and Roosevelt Road. It's home to many key cultural assets, such as Millennium Park and the Chicago Cultural Center. It's also home to many green spaces and even has a historic district spanning 14 blocks. Our recommendations strive to activate this Cultural Mile. Our first recommendation is transforming Michigan Avenue into a pedestrian, cyclist, and bus-only corridor. Our second recommendation is activating the underutilized pedway system. Our third and final recommendation is developing a Cultural Mile creative residency. Together, these recommendations will ensure that downtown remains the city's economic engine and cultural heart.
Downtowns are meant to be economic anchors for the region, attracting talent, innovation, and investment, and the Chicago Loop does just that. Making up less than 1% of the city's total land mass, it accounts for a third of the city's jobs and 15% of the city's property tax revenue. Additionally, it attracts tourists and residents with over 50 million visitors a year and the highest residential growth among downtowns. Despite its importance in the region, it has faced a few challenges following the pandemic, mostly due to the shift to remote and hybrid workers, resulting in less commuters, and which has caused more office vacancies, less foot traffic, as well as less retail activity. Additionally, Loop residents face high housing costs, with over a third of them being cost burden. To address these challenges, we hope to leverage key assets in the Loop, culture and connection. With over 1 million attendees just in the last quarter of 2024, accounting for over $300 million in economic benefits, the cultural aspect of the Loop is key to its economic vibrancy. Additionally, its multimodal connections, consisting of the CTA's L train, where the Loop gets its name, as well as multiple metro stations, bus stops, and divvy stations. It's clear that multimodal connections are what makes the Loop the Loop. Our recommendations offer a comprehensive solution to use culture and connection, using existing assets to build up Chicago back to its previous thriving state.
Our first recommendation is transforming Michigan Avenue between Monroe Street and Wacker Drive into a pedestrian, cyclist, and bus-only corridor, limiting vehicle access in order to promote bike, bus, and foot traffic. We strategically select the boundaries of Monroe Street and Wacker Drive because this is where key cultural assets are located. As you can see, the Chicago Cultural Center, Millennium Park. But it also gives us access to key parking garages for those who still choose to drive to commute to downtown. Additionally, this span of Michigan Avenue is able to support the infrastructure for increased pedestrian and cyclist traffic, which is important given recent trends in downtown. As we've already mentioned, downtown has not fully recovered to its pre-pandemic foot traffic levels. But we see that pedestrianized spaces offer an opportunity to be an economic boost in returned foot traffic to pre-pandemic states, as seen with Sundays on State Street here in Chicago, as well as Denver's 16th Street Mall, which brought over $3.7 billion in total economic impact. Scaling the success of these two, we project impact in annual dining and retail, foot traffic, as well as labor income. Beyond these economic impacts, our first recommendation has the opportunity to impact other areas, most notably improving the public perception of crime. In a 2022 Loop resident survey, the survey found that over 25% of residents in the Loop still felt unsafe in the Loop despite crime going down. According to the busy street theory, more people out on the streets will help improve this perception. In order to implement this, we will have to take key actions, including coordinating with key entities like CDOT, IDOT, and CTA to reroute traffic and make plans for emergency vehicles as well as off-hour deliveries. Additionally, we will pilot this program to test, evaluate, and refine before permanent implementation. During those pilot periods, we will use temporary infrastructure such as Jersey barriers, as well as the corridor ambassador programs to enforce those restrictions. Overall, this recommendation revitalizes the streets and pedestrian activity, but it's only one layer of our broader vision.
Further enhancing pedestrian mobility, our second recommendation is activating the underutilized Chicago Pedway system, an underground pedestrian walkway spanning over 40 blocks in greater downtown Chicago. The Pedway system is highly connective and has an exit or entrance directly along the corridor that we proposed for recommendation 1, connecting the Cultural Mile to other assets throughout the Loop, including the Theater District, and which will connect all the way in the main stem to the new Google headquarters. Despite its high potential and connectivity, it is highly underutilized, and it's over 100,000 commercial square feet is over half of its 100,000 commercial square feet is inactive. And we believe that based off of other pedestrian walkways such as PATH in Toronto and the Underground City in Montreal, that we can bring significant economic impact by revitalizing and renovating the Pedway. From retail alone, we have substantial tax revenue benefits as well as retail sales and creating new jobs. Additionally, it will continue enhancing the multimodal mobility It will continue enhancing multimodal mobility throughout the Loop, as well as encourage more public transit ridership. Additionally, we can use those spaces to increase programming in the Loop, especially during the winter, and expanding events like Chris Kendall Mark from Daley Plaza. Sustainable implementation will first involve creating centralized governance of key partners and owners of the Pedway, which has been a barrier in the past. Renovations will include making it ADA accessible, as well as incorporating artists to create murals throughout the Pedway, as well as creating a sheltered entrance at Millennium Park to increase visibility and usage.
Our third and final recommendation is developing a Cultural Mile creative residency program, which will provide affordable live-work spaces for creative workers throughout Chicago. Based on the current average income, artists cannot afford to live in the Loop without sustainable intervention. Because of that, we propose using key assets that already exist, including the Pullman Art Space and LaSalle Street Reimagined. Our goal is to combine this idea of arts-centered co-living with the scale of affordable units that LaSalle Street Reimagined will bring to downtown Chicago. Based on the 5 outlined developments in LaSalle Street Reimagined, we scaled that for our 3 developments with 30% affordable housing including those that are set aside for our artists. Outside of just economic impact, this will also impact other areas. Most notably is improving the relationship between the city and the creative workers, given recent federal and local budget cuts. Again, that community piece is going to be key in our implementation, with community engagements starting at the beginning, RFP proposals, developer selection, and then at the end, during our program launches, we hope to have programming and professional development opportunities for artists. Our proposal ultimately falls within this 3-year timeline that we were given, with all of our developments launching in early quarter 4 of year 3.
For successful implementation, we will need to partner with key partners and stakeholders in the public and private sector, as well as community organizations and NGOs. Additionally, we will have to find we will need strategic investments to make this possible, with the estimated cost of just over $300 million, primarily going towards developer support and infrastructure building. We will most notably need TIF funding, and we have a few strategies to acquire that, including amending the TIF Act so that transit TIFs can be used towards transit-oriented developments. This will help for all 3 recommendations. From TIF, federal transportation grants, as well as creating a business improvement district along the Cultural Mile to have funding partners, we believe that we will be just over our estimated costs. Overall, our proposal is comprehensive and uses what already exists in Chicago: culture and connection. Thank you.
Maybe I'll stand. I can stand up and like.
Mics are on, I think. Yeah. A great job. Thank you for doing this. Just a executional question. You showed a lot of partners and organizations who could help on this. Which entity, based on your thinking, should lead this initiative?
We believe that CDOT would be the best for the recommendation 1 and 2 would be the best leaders for those initiatives, just because they already manage those streets and they can implement different congestion policies to help mitigate the traffic rerouting.
Again, really great job. It's a brave and it's a bold vision, and I love the theme of culture and connection. Have you considered what will happen with the traffic that will not be allowed to go on Michigan Avenue, and where it will go as an alternative?
The aldermen love these things.
What's that?
The aldermen love them.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So traffic, if we have the clicker, if we go back, traffic will still be able to flow on those east and west streets. So it will really just be the north-south portions of the streets that'll be an issue. It also takes into account the access to the local parking garage. And we mainly will implement off-hour delivery, as well as improving pedestrian infrastructure as our primary ways of addressing the flows of traffic and safety.
Okay.
I had a
you.
question. Oh, sorry. No, please, you first.
Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I think you put a lot of work, clearly a lot of work into it. And as someone from Toronto, I appreciate the path mention. I was like, I used to take the path. All right. But just zooming out a little bit, you know, your project is called Activating the Cultural Mile. And obviously I see the intentional switch from, you know, the Mag Mile to the Cultural Mile. So just bring me into those conversations as a group as to like what the vision was overall. Like, what do you want to see that area look like? If this was to, you know, go into fruition, what would you want it to look like that's not represented now?
Yeah, so the Cultural Mile actually did exist prior to COVID-19. And what we're really trying to pitch here is the idea of bringing it back. Of course, the Magnificent Mile is just north of that. We want to continue that growth that the Magnificent Mile has experienced and connect Michigan Ave all the way down to things like the Theater District, near the orchestra, and the better half of the cultural and theater sides of the city.
Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit, whenever you see sort of geographic centered things, they're awesome because if they work, they create such vibrancy and they bring foot traffic. But how do you guys think about managing the micro businesses that will want to come in so that it's not just about the businesses that benefited from just being on that corridor?
I think the main connection between our recommendations of the corridor and the pedway really amplifies that business interaction, not just above ground, but below ground too. So there's ample vacant spaces where businesses, small businesses, artists can take advantage of to open up either pop-up shop or long-term businesses there and have that through year-round programming. And so that can be really amplified through the businesses and the events, big events like the Lollapalooza, that can interact with these businesses above ground and below ground too.
Just as a follow-up, I was thinking about the pedway too. And thank you, this was incredible. I mean, the only thing I used the pedway for was when I worked at City Hall. I could get that to Macy's and back on lunch hour in the winter and get my Christmas shopping done. So I would love to see that to be a real place. But does your budget include any like startup capital, those things to attract like the smaller businesses to come downtown and get them exposure?
Yes, part of our budget does include allocate some money towards just business like investments and funding, and ideally create a cultural mile like grant program that we can support those businesses that want to come, or maybe just startup businesses that want to get started in the cultural mile. And I believe it's in the appendix, a stronger breakdown. Towards the end. Okay, sorry.
Wow.
So detailed.
Yes.
Next one.
There.
Next one. There we go. We anticipate about $2.4 million in business support as overall for the overall initiative.
Thank you.
So I'm a building owner on that street, so Michigan and Wagner. So this would be very exciting. It would definitely create some vibrancy. But maybe speak to me as a landlord, thinking about the businesses. We have some vacancy on the street level. What types of businesses? Would there be incentives? Would there be other programs? How would the retail sort of landscape change in this corridor versus what it is now, which is, there's a lot of food and beverage and soft goods and that kind of stuff. Would it change completely? Would we see a different mix? Maybe just talk a little bit about the profile of businesses that would be along this corridor.
I think we anticipate like a diverse range of businesses coming. Thinking about some with the supporting the residential growth is a major goal of ours, and we know that there's like a lack of grocery stores and other like necessities in the loop. So prioritizing those that help with the residential growth, since we know that's a place that we're doing well, and supporting that, but also still welcoming a range of different businesses that just speak to the overall vision of the cultural mile.
Great, thank you.
What do you think is the biggest weakness of your concept?
You think there's weaknesses?
Good answer.
Well, obviously, I think any recommendation does present its challenge. I think one of the biggest challenges we will have is gathering everybody in the community to rally behind this. And I think through community engagement with some of the arts communities that we want to outreach with to have our cultural residency occur will probably be our biggest allies in doing that. Of course, this is a radical idea and change is typically radical, but we take those challenges on and we hope to actually bring this to fruition because we think it's a great way to evolve the downtown landscape.
Just adding to that as well, knowing the current state of federal grants is an area that we expect to see a few challenges, which is why we want to secure that TIF funding, as well as federal grants and the issues around artists and the city right now and building trust among those people.
Great point.
Awesome. Good.
Thank you.
So now we got, how much time do we have? We do this now?
Just do no comments. I never do comments.
Oh, great, thank you.
Oh, look at that. Thank you.
Dan? Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, thank you. This is for the next. Okay, great.
Probably.
Group 2.
Are we ready?
Right on. Oh,
Yeah.
Give us a.
Good?
wait, this is for the next one?
So what?
But yes, I will do it.
Oh,
Yeah, type.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dustin Cather. I'm here with my teammates, Haley Dudzinski and Luisa Montgomery, and thank you for hearing our proposal on residents, greenery, and life, a new vision for Chicago's Loop. So if you were to walk down LaSalle Street at 6 p.m. on any given Wednesday, you would probably see not much of anything really happening at all. Chicago has experienced a significant decline in the use of its downtown since the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses have suffered from decreased local foot traffic, and commercial office space still lie vacant to this day. As you can see on the screen, the South Street corridor is just a shell of its former self in present day. However, these shifts in how and where we work present Chicago with a unique opportunity to redefine a loop and how it serves its residents. To ensure sustainability, long-term growth, and equity, Chicago must continue to expand and improve upon its revitalization efforts through investments in innovative transportation, affordable housing, and pedestrian corridors. Our proposal aims to do this through 3 phases. The first of which, extend the 606 through downtown to Pinktown Park. Second, implement co-living in buildings undergoing residential to commercial to residential transition, and develop urban vertical agriculture to address the loop's chronic fresh food desert. So with that, I'm thrilled to present to you today phase 1 of our vision to connect Chicago back to its downtown, with an extension of one of the West Side's most beloved attractions, the 606 Trail. So the proposed extension would add roughly 3 miles to the existing 606 Trail, beginning at the currently in development Lincoln Yards project, and travel south down the Chicago River, will connect with the Chicago Riverwalk near Lake Street. From there, the trail will seamlessly integrate with the also in construction Pinktown Park Riverfront project, creating a continuous, accessible pedestrian corridor that connects the city's west and south sides into the loop. But extending the 606 isn't just about transportation, it's about transformation. The extension would promote a sustainable commuting alternative for pedestrians into the loop, offering trail goers with a permacultural paradise that supports and enhances Chicago's mission of becoming the greenest city in the world. The trail will also serve as a platform for inclusive community events, such as small markets and art installations that celebrate local culture and foster civic engagement along the path. The 606 would also serve as an economic engine, driving foot traffic into local businesses and opening the doors to new opportunities in neighborhoods that have shown significant growth throughout the years. Now, with the original 606 project, the city saw property values increase in some areas by in excess of 200%, generating a substantial rise in tax revenue for the city. But to ensure that the benefits of the trail are shared equitably, the city must support both commercial and residential entities, helping them thrive alongside the development, avoiding displacement, and ensuring that the economic gains do not come at the expense of Chicago's current and future residents. So we project that the cost of constructing this extension would be somewhere in the range of $90 to $110 million. Funding would come from a combination of public, private, and charitable funding sources, highlighting a strong cross-sector collaboration in support of public green infrastructure. And finally, in closing, we as a team believe that the 606 represents an investment in Chicago's future, a future that is more connected, literally, more active, and more vibrant than ever. Thank you, and I'll pass it along to Haley to talk about phase 2 and phase 3 of our proposal.
Thank you, Dustin. To take advantage of the newly expanded 606, the Loop is going to need new residents. Chicago agrees, and they are currently investing in repopulation. Through the recently shared Vision for LaSalle Street, the city has approved proposals for 5 buildings to undergo adaptive reuse and make the commercial to residential transition. This transition will utilize over 1.3 million square feet of vacant space and create 435 units of affordable housing. Our recommendation is that to expand and improve upon the current revitalization efforts, the City of Chicago should require that 1 floor in each of the 5 buildings be converted to co-living. Co-living has been proposed by researchers as a cost-effective solution to increase the housing supply and lower rent prices in urban areas. Co-living floors would consist of single units averaging about 150 square feet with furnishings similar to a college dorm. The kitchens, bathrooms, laundry, and common areas would all be communal. Due to this centralization of water sources, co-living conversions are much more cost-effective options for commercial to residential transition. According to research conducted in other U.S. metropolitan areas, conversion to co-living units rather than individual studios could save 45 to 60% on conversion costs. This would create savings for landowners and Chicago alike, as each building is requesting an average of $84,000 in TIF funding per unit. The outcome of implementing co-living floors would be lower rents, potentially under $500 per unit, an increased number of affordable units, cost savings on development and tax incentives, and property tax revenues. In addition, to advance equity and target the populations who could reach the most benefits, we think that each floor should be themed to create communities based on shared identities. Some potential themes could be college students, young professionals, seniors, and veterans. Administratively, as detailed in the IFP for these conversions, the city should continue to set the rules for this development while requiring partnerships between private investors, landowners, and community stakeholders, elected and residential alike. And finally, to tie together the 606 extension and our new residential community, we will be connecting the afflicted LaSalle Street corridor to the Riverwalk along Adams Street via a vehicle-less, multi-use pathway. This green street would provide an opportunity for new developments, including kiosks, food trucks, and entertainment, as well as provide pocket parks for the new residents. In our research, we looked at data from IDOT's GIS database for average annual daily traffic. As you can see, at peak year and peak volume, reached in 2010, 2017, and 2018 respectively, traffic along Adams Street was consistently above 10,000 cars. However, in 2023, traffic fell significantly and consistently in all segments. These 40 to 65% declines in volume show that Adams Street is not being used to its full potential. Fortunately, this also means that our pedestrian corridor will not be causing any mass traffic disruptions. Many villages, towns, and communities have also transitioned to pedestrian corridors. For example, the village of Arlington Heights, where my groupmate Luis lives, closes all vehicle access within the downtown from May 1st to mid-October. This would have been unthinkable in a suburb prior to COVID, but now the city looks forward to it every year. Other local communities, including Park Ridge and Mount Prospect, also do this to varying degrees, and the trend is going international. London is converting the iconic Oxford Circus to a pedestrian thoroughfare, and Paris recently voted to create 500 additional pedestrian streets. So, we've discussed alternate access via the extended Riverwalk network, the avant-garde residential approach, but the pièce de résistance, the magnum opus, and the jewel of our proposal is to bring the city's motto, Urbs and Orto, to life. Urbs and Orto Vere, an indoor vertical farm at the heart of the Adams Street Green Corridor. We specifically looked at a parking garage at 211 West Adams, which is 60,000 square feet and 5 stories tall. We assumed 1 acre for the 4 floors that could be converted to vertical farming. Looking at a cross-section of fruit and vegetable prices, the 4 acres could provide over $4 million in gross revenue. Additionally, the ground level would host the Loop's first and only full-size grocery store, ending the neighborhood's food desert and bringing the fresh food source the residents of this community desperately deserve. Urban agriculture could also be an opportunity for the city's youth employment initiatives. We also researched the tax revenue for 211 West Adams. In 2019, it had a tax assessment value of over $2 million. However, the assessment in 2024 came in at under $1.5 million, a 30% decline. Our conversion to a vertical farm will increase the property value and therefore provide additional income to be reinvested into this district's revitalization. Administratively, a strong public-private partnership, similar to the one detailed in the LaSalle Street IFP, can be a blueprint for the vertical farming effort. In conclusion, Our expansion of the 606, implementation of urban co-living, and creation of a pedestrian corridor and urban vertical farm will lead to the long-term vitality of Chicago's Loop by increasing the residential population. We leave you today with this quote from famed architect David Burnham: "We share his vision and we make no little plans." Thank you.
Where do you want the first one?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Let me ask a question about La Salsa Reimagined. As you probably know, the 5 properties currently in consideration face significant issues on raising capital. Are you at all concerned that having additional restriction with the communal space to make it even more challenging to raise the capital in a very challenging environment?
It could be an additional restriction, but we think it could also be an additional opportunity. Potentially, they could use it in advertising to try to raise some more capital or some seed funds from someone who would like to try to pilot this new innovative living approach. It could also be used as potential for duplication in other cities. It could also be a potential revenue source for them. Since they're going to have more units, they could make more on rent. So if we could get it to see them to see it that way.
And I would add the cost of renovation would be less than the cost of renovation for individual units. Therefore, the seed capital, the capital that we require to make the conversion, would be less.
It would go further.
Are there any U.S. examples of the communal living model that you're really fascinated with or you think are particularly good?
In Denver,
Yeah.
and I believe it was in Austin, they were looking at doing it to some smaller buildings. I believe that they're still in construction, so they haven't moved in yet, but it's very promising in terms of the rents that you can get. There's interest in the community and the infrastructure of the buildings. Because of the water infrastructure, having
Yeah.
to do less of it, there's been more landlord take up.
Okay.
And there's 2 locations in Arlington Heights, not to,
Yeah.
that are doing this, one for veterans
Okay.
and one for single mothers, I think. Smaller, much smaller, a very Maryville house in Arlington Heights.
I love the theming of the floors, and I think that's a great idea.
Veterans are needed. I mean, it's
Yeah.
needed
Yep.
desperately.
Makes a lot of
Same
sense.
within the senior population. It's really.
Yes, senior
interesting idea.
population.
Yeah.
My mother would be living there.
Yeah, same.
There's a lot of people who aren't in the traditional family unit where you would need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So we think that it could really draw in a population that's very underserved residentially.
Yeah.
I would live in it.
The phrase "city in a garden" is one that is very differentiating for Chicago if we can make people believe it. And I love the connection of that. And when we look at Chicago, certainly the lake is a huge differentiator. Nobody can claim that much fresh water. I think a garden near the lake also makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit about kind of bringing that to life. I mean, we've got a wonderful walking center and a urban farming institution, but what else were you thinking about? I mean, that's a pretty big hook.
Can you be a little bit more specific in terms of, how would it feel walking down?
How are you going to bring that concept to life?
Well, I'm an engineer, so you're going to get me down.
Okay,
Want to get me
so you got a marketer here.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem.
I really think, I think you got it. You take out the streets, you make it trees, you make it truly a walkable park, like a living walkway, which then with that you could, there was something, and then at the cross streets, you could see the cyan arrows. Those are the cross streets in the direction of traffic. Wacker's 2-way, Franklin is 1-way north, Wells is 1-way south. And then you could see the other arrows, by the way, for the traffic going around the closed down streets.
Yep.
But I would actually make it elevated across. So there's no differentiation between like sidewalk and street. So as you're crossing the Wells, for example, it's higher than the cross traffic. So cross traffic would actually have to kind of do a speed bump, if you will. It'd still be signalized. It'd need to be because it's got active traffic on the cross street. But I do think that would transform the essence I know this was an experiment that was done on State Street many years ago, if you remember that time, which I do. And the one problem is that they allowed other vehicles on there. They allowed some traffic on there, which always caused a problem with the conflict with the pedestrian, very slow, obviously, and a vehicle, whether it be a bus, whether it be a taxi cab or whatever. There's a conflict. So you got to remove it, in my opinion. You got to remove that conflict to make it more viable. Does that help you?
Sure.
He stole my question.
I had a follow-up question on the flexible living or common living space. It is still accurate to describe it as an experiment, right? Because there's no one who's done that for, say, 5 years and sort of looked at how it evolves, how it works.
Correct. We would be on the very innovative side of this approach.
Challengingly innovative.
Yes, there's been a lot of research done on it. A lot of academics are very interested, but you are correct. In terms of implementation, they are lacking. But I think that could also be something we could use to our advantage, since it could meet the needs of Chicago. We could make it very Chicago specific. But yes, that is correct.
As you research the 606, I know talk about expansion has been discussed, and they run into some challenges. Any of those challenges you've uncovered or would address as you have bold ambitions to bring it even further south?
So I'm calling it Downtown 2.0 with the Lincoln Yards project. They have plans to implement their own Riverwalk, and what the extension essentially is a continuation from that endpoint all the way down to Lake Street. Looking at the route, you'll see as it goes down the east side of Goose Island and all the way down the river. There could be some businesses and large and small commercial entities that are like harder to implement, like our let's say, what am I trying to think of here? There could be some challenges, sorry. There's a lot of industrial type of buildings in that area. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
And those are a little bit harder to reimagine unless, one closes down, you turn into another brewery on Goose Island and have a few drinks in that area. So,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Good. Thank you.
I like it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to follow up on that last one, we wouldn't have as many concerns with displacement, because a lot of the area where, especially north of the loop, where we'd be expanding the 606, is not currently inhabited. It goes right past what will be the new Bally's Casino, which of course will legally need to create a Riverwalk as well, and Lincoln Yards and the 78 are still in development. So we would have a lot fewer of the residential displacement concerns as the original 606 did.
Great. Yeah. Excellent.
And I'll just follow up again for the extension for the terminus at Lake Street right now, down to Ping Tong Park. That is right now in very, very much planning mode. They haven't even decided what side of the river it's going to be on. It could be, I have it depicted on the east side of the river. I actually think it might actually be better to be on the west side, although there'll be some bridge crossing action, because now you would connect Ogilvy, Union Station, and potentially other, train stations or whatever further south, all the way back down to Ping Tong Park, and then the 78, which is right adjacent to the LaSalle Street station too. So it's a connection. I mean, we are, as Dustin said, we are connecting the west and the south sides.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can we start? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Collar de Beaufort, and I'm here with my team members, Paul Zicheng and Melody Slaughter. Also, good evening, good morning to anyone watching in a different time zones. But we're excited to present to you our proposal to revitalize downtown Chicago through an innovative public-private young professional housing network. I want you to imagine a downtown Chicago where instead of these vacant office buildings, we have vibrant, active spaces where young people can live, work, build community. Instead of these high-rise ghost towns, we propose a thriving network of affordable, well-designed housing that also revitalizes local businesses and public spaces. Our proposal transforms this challenge into an opportunity, but by creating a citywide network of converted office buildings that addresses multiple urban needs simultaneously. Downtown Chicago faces a 23.2% direct office vacancy rate and a 26.3% total office vacancy rate. So that means nearly 1 in 4 buildings are empty. Each vacant building represents lost property value, diminished tax revenue, and reduced foot traffic. At the same time, 73% of Gen Zers report feelings of loneliness and self-isolation. In addition to that, every year around 300,000 people leave the state of Illinois, and those people, the majority, are of working age individuals. So they're taking their talent, their tax revenue, and their economic productivity elsewhere. Despite our world-class universities, and Melody is a proud UIC graduate, Chicago struggles to retain graduates who choose to move to cities like Austin, Denver, New York. And Chicago, they choose not to come to Chicago for 3 key reasons. First, housing affordability. Young professionals can't justify spending a minimum of 40% of their income on independent, individual, isolated apartments. Second, community connection. Young professionals seek built-in social infrastructure that our current housing systems don't provide. And third, career opportunity. Talent flows to cities with integrated ecosystems that connect housing, employment, and education. Developers see the solution. It's to convert these buildings into residential use. But they face barriers to change in the form of prohibited zoning laws, expensive code compliance, and impact fees that make conversions financially unviable without intervention. These aren't separate problems, but they're interconnected symptoms of our changing urban landscape. This isn't just a development issue, it's a civic and social challenge affecting Chicago's entire economic future. Our Young Professional Housing Network addresses these challenges through 6 integrated components. First, we create affordable co-living spaces with private micro-units complemented by shared kitchens, lounges, and co-working spaces. This design reduces both living and conversion costs while fostering the community connections young professionals seek. Second, and this is our core innovation, so pay attention, we establish a citywide network of shared amenities. So unlike isolated developments, residents access features across multiple buildings. A rooftop garden in one building, a fitness center in another, a co-working space in the third, all through a unified membership system. This approach distributes costs while maximizing amenities, creating premium living experiences without the premium prices. Third, ground floors become dynamic public spaces that revitalize the street experience with gift cafes, galleries, event spaces, pop-up retail, and more. These activated spaces generate foot traffic throughout the day and evening, supporting small businesses and enhancing public safety. Fourth, this initial phase, the pilot program, focuses on young professionals. Not because they're the only demographic that matters, and I'm not saying that because I'm biased, but because they represent the strategic starting point with the strongest market demand and greatest economic multiplier effect. Fifth, we implement city-led support through expedited zoning approvals, building code adjustments for co-living designs, and fee waivers that significantly reduce development costs. This regulatory framework enables developers to profitably convert spaces that would otherwise remain vacant. And finally, we established university and corporate partnerships connecting young professionals directly to housing and employment opportunities, creating a seamless talent pipeline that benefits educational institutions, employers, and young professionals alike.
Our implementation follows a deliberate 3-year plan designed to build momentum while minimizing risk. Year 1 focuses on laying the groundwork. We'll appoint a dedicated city housing coordinator who will serve as the central point of coordination between developers, universities, and city departments. We'll secure the necessary zoning variances, fee waivers, and expedited permitting processes to remove barriers to development, and simultaneously, we'll identify and assemble initial properties, prioritizing those already city-owned or at high risk of foreclosure. Year 2 centers on building up the physical and operational network. We'll begin property conversions on selected pilot buildings, carefully monitoring costs and timelines to refine our model. We'll also open applications for small businesses and community operators to activate ground floor spaces. During this phase, we'll develop the technology and management systems to operate the shared amenity network effectively. Year 3 launches our first wave of co-living spaces. We'll leverage university partnerships for marketing to recent graduates and young professionals, and we'll host cultural and business events in our ground floor spaces to drive foot traffic and demonstrate the concept's viability. Success metrics will be rigorously tracked, including resident satisfaction, economic impact on the surrounding areas, and occupancy rates, allowing us to refine our financial models and begin expanding to additional properties. The Young Professional Housing Network delivers multiple integrated benefits to Chicago. First, vacancy reductions. Our model, informed by research, predicts 90% occupancy in converted buildings, transforming liabilities into productive assets, generating tax revenue and economic activity. Second, financial sustainability. We create a self-reinforcing cycle. More residents generates increased foot traffic, which supports local businesses, which enhances property value, which generates additional tax revenue, which can then be invested back into the area. Third, workforce pipeline. By partnering with universities and employers, we retain Illinois graduates and attract young professionals, providing a direct pathway from education to housing to employment within the city. Fourth, community building. The network fosters connections between residents and with the broader downtown community, addressing social isolation through intentional design. Fifth, inclusive design. While our initial focus is on young professionals, the model incorporates varying unit sizes and configurations to accommodate diverse needs. And lastly, and most importantly, the model is highly scalable. As we prove its success, the framework can expand to serve, for example, empty nesters seeking community without maintenance burdens, remote workers requiring flexible live-work spaces, and essential workers requiring affordable housing near employment centers. We posit that this isn't just a housing project. It's a transformational shift in how we use our downtown spaces. By reimagining our vacant office buildings not as what they were, but what they could be, we secure Chicago's place as a vibrant, innovative city that attracts talent, fosters community, and leads in urban adaptation. The question isn't whether we can afford to pursue this vision, it's whether we can afford not to. Thank you for your time, and we welcome your questions now.
I'll take first shot then. I don't see anybody jumping up. It wasn't clear to me what the cost of your proposal was. Can you talk to me a little bit about?
Yeah. Do you want to?
I would say just, you could take it
Start.
while I go.
Okay, we're gonna pull up some slides for you.
Okay.
But really the cost of this is because it's a public-private partnership. So these private corporations that are developers are taking in the costs of developing these housing units, just like they would if they were doing this independent outside of this project. And in return, they're gaining the revenue of like converting these buildings. Ed?
So really more so what our anticipated main issue was that we're trying to answer here is how can we attract developers, right? And from some of the private firms that we ended up being in conversation with, they mentioned again, like kind of the prohibitive policies that downtown Chicago has with the legal terminology of affordable housing. Our goal here is to make it easier for these developers to come in so that the outcome is affordable housing without necessarily all the political red tape rah-rah.
And if I can jump in, one of the key things that makes this unique is by fully embracing the co-living structure for the entire building, they are considerably cheaper, or well, more affordable to construct than traditional buildings. So the Pew Research Center has done numerous studies on this and has pilot projects in Minneapolis, Seattle, and Austin. And you can see that the overall cost for like government subsidies or funding from the city of Chicago is significantly less for an entire building that uses these co-living spaces.
If you look at vacant or semi-vacant office spaces right now in the Loop, from your experience or from your research, how many of them are the percentage-wise really suited for conversion into residential?
Oh, sorry. Here. Well, I can say right off the top, when we studied the Cook County assessor data, and I know that the assessor data is not always the most up to date, but there are numerous properties that have low vacancies and have both office space and currently use office space and commercial space. In addition to that, Crane Chicago Business has published a list of more than this, but we've included 11 here, potential office buildings that are in their own studies at high risk of foreclosure because they have been late on legal filings or there are other foreclosure issues. So there's quite a few properties available for this, primarily centered in the Northwest Loop, but throughout the Loop and to a lesser extent in the adjacent area outside of the Loop. But if you wanted exact numbers, I'd have to go back into my data set, and that would take a little bit of time. Not too much, honestly.
What's your gut tell you you can do as far as how many students would you be able to house and how many units would you be able to fill?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I can tell you that each of these units, again, the Pew Center has numerous floor plans for these and in numerous cities, and they're about 150 square feet per micro unit plus the surrounding space. So it's substantial. It's been tested in those test markets, and I guess the other follow-up question to that would be there's definitely demand for it because I think it's 300,000 or something new graduates every year out of Chicago.
But in general, to answer your question, that would vary depending on the office building, right? So if you wanted specificity on that, we can again kind of go back to the data set on that and get you those numbers.
We could add up the number of total square feet and then divide them by the 150-ish and give you a number, but as Melody said, it depends.
Yeah.
Whichever way you want to slice and dice it.
Okay.
It's very possible to pull those, to generate those estimates, though.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the beginning. First of all, great presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time. But you know, this focus on young professionals, if you can even go back to the slide where you had like Gen Z and isolation, I just think that's very interesting that you took all of that into consideration and decided to make that your focus. Because you could have gone several different ways with create a thriving downtown. You were like, yeah, but we got to focus on the people of the future. Tell me more about that.
Sure. So I hear a lot of old folks say around the Chicagoland area, children are our future, invest in our youth. And this was our way of putting Chicago's money where its mouth is. That children are the future, the youth is the future, that Chicago has a wealth of amazing institutions and universities that produce amazing individuals, such as ourselves, and who need employment and housing opportunities, especially in this economy. And this was our way of kind of consolidating and combining those ideas.
And we also, to quickly add on to that, we focused our initial 3 years on young professionals to, well, we're a little biased, but because we see the need for it, and also to prove that our concept is viable, sustainable, and can then, as Paul was mentioning earlier, can be scaled to other demographics and other groups. So obviously the young professionals and young people are very important to us and to the entire world. But we're not saying it's to exclude anyone, because it can be modeled to anyone else that may want it or need it.
It's kind of just a, if you build it, they will come.
Just going to say that if they build it and Gen Z does come, are there additional commercial developments or other things that you would think that area will need to do to be a community and a networked area that they would want to stay and live?
So if you could go to the slide with the public forum spaces.
Yes.
So we ended up kind of creating a list, not an exhaustive list, of what kinds of businesses may or other entities may or may not fill these empty first floor spaces that we're seeing downtown. I feel, or we feel, as though this gets at that angle of the question that you're asking. So for instance, something that Allison shared was this forum space that's in New York City, and we don't really have a big one of those for like intellectuals such as ourselves that UChicago loves downtown, right? So like, and I remember seeing something online about, you know, having these intellectual meetups at bars, things that young people would appreciate, especially working young professionals might appreciate. And so we kind of see this taking place to offer that connectivity, while at the same time downtown is the neighborhood, right? Like, it is the community. You have so much that's already available, and again, if you build it, the people will come. If the people come, the money comes, the stores come back.
Thank you.
I will say there are some, I mean, the other teams that have presented and will present have some really great ideas. But on our end, we think that pulling in the people first before putting in the investments on building new infrastructure will not only help the city's economic viability, but also ensure that it's prosperous in the future, as opposed to taking the losses now and just hoping that it works out. Ensuring that the economic gains come first, and then being able to put that back into the city afterwards.
And I think as well, part of the attractiveness of the shared amenity system is the more you scale, the more buildings that implement it, the more shared spaces that you can have, and the more flexibility and the more options you can have to implement different, you know, amenities for different people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's nice to be pushed off the stage by applause.
Right?
Hello. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are really looking forward to sharing with you our plan for revitalizing the Loop with a suite of public policies entitled Urban, Not Suburban, the Loop for Families. My name is Hannah Flint.
My name is Marlon Exton.
And in the audience, our third very important member, Liz Schutz. The Loop is Chicago's fastest growing neighborhood. But underneath this optimistic statistic lies a troubling trend. More than half of current Loop residents report that they will be leaving the Loop within the next 1 to 5 years. This mass exodus of Loop residents poses a huge challenge for Loop sustainability, vitality, and resident density. Let's look a little closer at the data to see if we can understand what the heck is going on here. So, the average Loop resident is a millennial. This is somebody ages 28 to 43. Millennial Loop residents are, on average, high earners, making more than $100,000 a year. They self-report that they are living with a romantic partner, but they do not yet have children. And this, we believe, is key. We think that these millennial Loop residents are falling prey to a cultural narrative that tells them the Loop is a super cool, fun, hip place to live before you have kids, but when you're getting ready to start a family, you should leave. The Loop is not a good fit for kids. This presents a golden opportunity for the city of Chicago to step in and reshape this cultural narrative. The city of Chicago should be telling its Loop millennial residents, you already live in the Loop. You chose to live in the Loop. You love it. You're an urbanite. When you have children, you should stay. You can raise a family in the Loop. So we're going to talk about some specific policy proposals that we believe will help shape this narrative. But before we do, I'd like to make a couple of notes. Our team has been thinking and talking about this subject for many months now. And we have come to the conclusion that not every Chicagoan wants to live in the Loop, and that's okay. But we believe very strongly that every Chicagoan should feel welcomed into the Loop. You will see that we have really anchored our policy proposals in the fundamentally equitable institutions of Chicago, including the Chicago Park District and the Chicago Public School System. The next note I'd like to make is about the use of the term millennials. I've already said it a couple times, but to clarify, these are not policies just for millennials. These are policies for families, and we believe our solutions are for the long term. So to talk a little bit more about what this family-friendly urban oasis is going to look like in the Loop and how the city of Chicago can make that a reality, we're going to talk about policies related to housing, public amenities, and public-private partnerships. So let's get into the housing piece. To reiterate, we believe that one of the factors driving residents from the Loop is the lack of the correct family-sized housing. Current Loop housing stock is only 2% 3 bedrooms. This is a critical issue that the city of Chicago needs to step in to address. We believe that the city should be requiring developers to meet a minimum threshold when it comes to incorporating 2 and 3 bedroom units. Secondly, we think the city of Chicago should get the ball rolling on a family-friendly landmark building directly in our urban core. So similar to the LaSalle Street revitalization process, the first step would be that the city of Chicago would conduct an analysis of vacant and underutilized office space in our beautiful landmark buildings to see which of those would be most amenable to those larger 2 and 3 unit bedrooms, apartments. Once the city of Chicago has a solid housing supply plan in place, it's very important to look at the landscape of amenities. When a prospective family comes to look at that 2 or 3 bedroom unit, they're not just thinking about square footage, they're thinking about what's outside the front door. Where are they going to take their kids to eat? Where are they going to take their kids to play? And oh my gosh, where are their kids going to go to school? All right? So for a very important conversation about amenities and the landscape, I pass it to Marlon, literally. There you go.
Thank you, Hannah. So when we consider what amenities drive neighborhood feel, we're referring to schools, community centers, and outdoor spaces. For schools, a pivotal need for downtown is the creation of a public elementary school. Why, you ask? Because there are 0, count them 0, public elementary schools in Chicago's downtown. And if we are asking folks to raise their kids here, where are they going to go to school? when the closest elementary school is a 25-minute walk from the Loop Center. Another important neighborhood amenity is a community center, a space that offers opportunities that are free and easily accessible, places where families of all types can use as a third space. And a third space is a place where people can go to just be. The Chicago Park District Community Center will, as the Chicago Park District itself states, create strengthen community ties for people of all ages, identities, and abilities. A community center is a pillar that would be sustainable for locals and Chicagoans year-round, but an equally vitalizing opportunity is the presence of outdoor neighborhood spaces. Now, this is outside of large-scale national events. NASCAR is amazing, Lollapalooza is amazing, but those do not a neighborhood make. We need small spaces with local events that appeal to the neighborhood. Events like Sunday on State, which was shown not only to be popular amongst Chicago residents, but also increased traffic to businesses on State by about 20%. It was a very successful example of a public-private partnership that created an outdoor neighborhood amenity for Chicagoans. Public-private partnerships are the third pillar of our policy. As with Sundays on State, Chicago should explore other opportunities for family-friendly cultural engagement. Opportunities like a free family museum pass, which would promote increased local engagement at a minimal cost to these organizations. These are win-win scenarios. Third spaces for families and children, increased sales opportunities for our businesses. Creating a vibrant neighborhood is only possible when there are spaces for families to just be. And Chicago has just the tool, the DEMA. DEMA is the Development and Maintenance Agreement. And it says to local businesses, hey, open your space up for residents. Let them see it as a third space. And you'll see that your business will increase. This is an example of a third space. This is the Chicago Athletic Association's drawing room and lobby. It's a safe and comfortable place where families can rest, make purchases if they want, use restrooms, which is a need when you have kids. In fact, let's talk about restrooms for a second. Did you know that Chicago, the entire city, only has 200 public restrooms available year-round? That is far too few. DEMA would be the tool to address that, to remove barriers from Chicagoans who live in and visit the Loop to spend more time amongst Chicago businesses. Speaking of businesses, with the Loop being Chicago's fastest growing neighborhood, market demand is already attracting large chains, but we don't want to leave out small local businesses. These businesses define a neighborhood. Family-friendly businesses such as daycares, fast casual dining, family entertainment will encourage burgeoning families to keep their dollars in the Loop. Chicago can incentivize new and small family-friendly businesses through tools like the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. This is incredibly important because data shows that current Loop residents spend nearly $1 billion outside of the Loop. These dollars can easily be captured using our public-private partnership pillar. And this is only the beginning. Key point, it costs approximately $16,000 a year to raise a child in Illinois, and we want that money to stay right in the Loop. To conclude, our urban, not suburban policy is fiscally healthy, inclusive, and sustainable. This is how we revitalize downtown. This is the vibrant downtown. Our urban, not suburban policy is the future. Thank you.
Do you imagine, thank you for that, that was fabulous. Do you imagine wanting to keep families for pre-K through 12th, et cetera? Like how long? Because we also lose a lot of families at that kindergarten mark. So I'm imagining you've also thought through childcare, daycare, or early childhood, 0 to 5. But then we also lose them when they're inching towards high school. And so just curious how you're thinking about that. The elementary school, I get the data on that.
That's a magnificent question. So actually there are, just as an example of how this model can work, there are 2 public high schools downtown already, Innovations and Intrinsic. So they've shown that the model can work and it can easily be fit to meet the needs of the residents there. But even building an elementary school will keep residents there for a few more years than they would have been without it. So the opportunity cost is huge.
How would you respond to someone who would argue that the core thesis of your concept is incorrect? Because if you look at it from a policy perspective, at the city of Chicago, you have a portfolio of 77 neighborhoods. Not everyone needs to be family friendly. The Loop has a very different function than Lincoln Park, Hyde Park, Albany Park, which is much more family friendly. You don't want to make every neighborhood kind of the same function in your portfolio.
What we saw in our analysis of the data is that families from the Loop, they're typically not moving to other Chicago neighborhoods. They're moving to the suburbs. They're moving to Oak Park, River Forest. They're moving out to Naperville. And so it's not just the Loop that's losing the taxpayer dollars. It's the entire city that's losing out on these families. We think that most of these families, though, they are people, like my colleague Hannah said, they're already in the Loop. And so we want to show them you can stay here somewhere that you can walk downstairs. You don't need a car. You can get a babysitter, walk to the bar in 15 minutes. You can also take your kid to school and walk there in 15 minutes.
And I would say to add on to that, I think that the Loop, I think, is unusual in its lack of family-friendly amenities. I think that every other neighborhood has, its own flavor and feeling, but the vast majority of them have a lot of these components. And a Loop that is primarily for workers and single people and commuters is a Loop of the past. We're not going back there. I don't think we're going back there. We think that we're looking at a new version of the Loop, and being family friendly is like a necessary component of any element in your portfolio. It has to be there in some capacity, or else you're just letting your residents walk away. Taxpayer dollars.
I think of the Loop as, sometimes noisy, lots of people, traffic, cars. And as a mom, my kids are on the other end of things. They're teens. But have you thought about that? Like families, I think of residential neighborhoods that I've lived in over the years of the course of my kids' lives. And we're rushing out there to put the quiet signs and, to be mindful of kids out there playing, kickball or whatever. I'm trying to picture that in the Loop. And so maybe I'm wrong and I'm thinking of the Loop of the past. So just smack me.
Come on.
But no smacks needed.
I'm like, no. It's a completely legitimate question.
Absolutely.
Right. I
Help
think
me see the vision.
Right. Well, that's the big part of our proposal is that there needs to be a cultural shift. We found a lot of qualitative data that shows that new parents, expecting parents, are talking to their friends and they're saying, come join us out in the suburbs. Mm-hmm. So we need to get to that crucial tipping point where there are the amenities for families to even be able to envision themselves. I think similar to what the group before us said, in some ways we need to build it and they will come. We can't expect families to want to stay in the Loop when there's not even 3 bedrooms for them to stay in.
Right.
In our analysis, we found that for the families that aren't moving to the suburbs, that are staying in Chicago, they're typically moving to 2 neighborhoods. It's Wicker Park and Logan Square. And what they're doing is they're buying these 2 to 4 apartment flats and they're converting them into single family homes. So there is a demand for these young professionals, new growing families, to have that hustle and bustle in the city. There's just not the supply in the Loop.
I think I'm just jealous. I want to be a Loop millennial.
Go back in your time machine. Yeah, I think we looked at a lot of data from Vancouver, where they have a lot of family-friendly urbanism policies in place. And studies there are surveys of families who are raising children in these skyscraper kind of environments. their satisfaction levels are actually very high with the living environment, given that there's other families around. That's really the caveat. It's not so much the yards, it's not so much the typical white picket fence, but it's that idea of other kids to play with. And so, yeah, it does take a little bit of a reimagining, but we think that there are people who are urbanites. They like that hustle and bustle, but they are just being told that it's not where kids belong. And we think with some creativity that could be reshaped, and those, again, tax dollars and residents could be captured.
Just to add on to that, when you're thinking about inclusivity and also thinking about things that can happen in the next 3 years, the amenities are things that can actually attract Chicago neighborhood residents right now, right? And so some of those amenities are just geared towards families, like a community center, like fast casual dining. Sometimes when you see people who are like you around and they actually have things to do, you'll think about that place as a place where you can be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why do you think the market isn't already providing the 3-bedroom if the demand is there?
This is the deconversions of the multi-unit housing on the north side of Chicago, where we're losing naturally affordable housing. The market wants those 3 bedrooms. It's not there in Chicago. I think it's just, I think some developers we've heard maybe are hesitant too about rental market and feeling like the rental market is not strong enough for the 3 bedrooms. But I think that there should be some creativity maybe around more of a push for ownership, because I think some of these high net worth individuals who live in the Loop, again, they want to build equity. Like, think of all these employees coming with Google, right? Even though if they're here for 5 years, they might want to build equity. The only place they can buy a 3-bedroom is on the north side or in these other neighborhoods, not downtown Chicago. So, but it's a good question that deserves some more investigation, I believe, yeah.
Actually, and also just to add to that, so when you think about just what drives market demand, right? So if people have the means to buy a 3-bedroom home, right, they're obviously looking for more than one person to stay in that home, but you can move into this unit and then you don't have a supermarket nearby. You don't have a school nearby. You don't have the things that people also look for when they're looking at 2 3-bedroom homes. So it has to be a combination of both things.
Could I pose a question to the audience? How many parents do we have in the audience? And how many of you live in the Loop? Not a single.
Oh, there's one hand. There's one hand on deck there.
I think I saw one hand. Well, that is why our urban, not suburban policy is the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well played. Yeah.
It was very good.
It was.
It's good. Let's cut it off.
Okay.
We're getting booze.
I got it right now. I haven't done. Not done. Oh,
Well, thank you again. One more round of applause for all of our presenters. We're going to let the judges retire and deliberate. While that's going on, as mentioned, we have an opportunity for audience Q&A. So if you have not yet, please do scan the QR code and submit your questions. Come on up. We have more help from the Mansueto Institute with the facilitating of the Q&A. So for all of our groups, feel free and come on up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Wilson. I'm the Executive Director at the Mansueto Institute, and I have the pleasure of moderating all of your questions. As was mentioned, if you would like to submit a question, please scan this QR code. We're going to be doing that digitally. I have the questions here. Some have been submitted already. The judges are gone, so you can ask the really hard ones now of the teams. The die is cast, so to speak. So please submit those. And I have a couple. There's 2 I'm going to put together for the teams. I think you guys have some representatives who will be answering these, but feel free. These ones, this is, I think, primarily for team number 1. There's 2 I'm going to group together. One is the, let me find these. Hold on, they're out of order now. So there was a question about how you lit on the community arts sector. There's an opinion here that they're often overlooked, so why the Arts Center? But then also the second question was, how are you going to sort of subsidize, if you could talk more substantively about how you're going to subsidize sort of the artist's ability to inhabit these spaces in the loop that you're thinking about creating?
So a key component or the theme of ours was culture and connection, and we know that the artists drive that cultural piece, both like actual artists and also cultural workers, people who are working in these cultural institutions. And in order to make it affordable and sustainable for artists, 30% of the units in our developments will be reserved for affordable housing. And of that 30%, a portion of those will be reserved for artists and cultural workers, and we'll use an application process to get through that. And then additionally, we want to have programming in partnerships with cultural institutions to provide professional development opportunities. We mentioned artist murals in the Pedway. We want to bring in local artists to give them those economic stimulants.
Additionally, these will be multi-use developments, so they will ideally include different studios and exhibits that can be used by the public as well, and hopefully employ some of these artists that we're housing, but also priority towards the artists using them for their own work. So that's how we're trying to subsidize some other costs that artists are running into, as well as offer them different professional development opportunities.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here for this. I'm going to skip to team 4. How do you plan to address, or could you talk more about crime and some of the other rising concerns in the loop, particularly as it relates to families?
Sure. So a study from the Chicago Loop Alliance, they surveyed over 1,000 families in the loop, and 84% of them said that they felt safe. So we really think that there's this narrative that's being perpetuated by media, maybe scaring, driving the stereotype that the loop is not safe for families. But when we looked at the data, that was not a concern of families that were leaving. Really what they were looking for were the schools, were these walkable amenities to create this idea of a 15-minute neighborhood.
I think I would also open that up to any other teams. You're talking about increasing people into the loop, and I think that's a valid question for any of the teams to answer.
Yes, sure. So while our project, as we said, starts with, recent graduates and young professionals, we kind of see this project being highly scalable. And so we talked about expanding to, for instance, empty nesters were one such population we mentioned as an anchor population, because a lot of empty nesters, when their kids move out, they get lonely and they want to actually have a life again. And so they can move downtown and, have tailored programming for them and any of their friends, who might be peers within that same age demographic. At the same time, maybe we can talk about expanding to trades workers or tradespeople who might also want to participate in something like this, a co-living space where you can become more connected with your peers, you can network, you can have friends again. Unlike, what we've kind of experienced during the post-pandemic age.
Thank you for reminding us to stand up. Addressing the aspect of crime, as the member from Team 4 mentioned, it's definitely a perception problem. And a lot of that is going to be solved by bringing more people and increasing that feeling of safety. For us specifically, our Pedway idea also kind of fixing the infrastructure, improving lighting and things like that, and making it overall feel safer, because again, crime stats are showing that crime is actually decreasing in the loop. So it's about shifting that perception of crime.
We also want to utilize different programs that some of the partners we recommended before already have in place. The Chicago Loop Alliance has a Street Ambassadors program that's been very successful at giving referrals to people, to unhoused people on the streets who need different social services, as well as just being kind of the eyes on the street regularly. Additionally, with the transformation of Michigan Avenue, we expect more foot traffic, which will help have less offenders, will help offenders have less potential victims, as more traffic and crowding is there. So hopefully that will deter that over time.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. This has to do with a question of concern, I think, across the city. It was aimed at Team 3, but I think this is something everyone could think about. Would supercharging the loop with upwardly mobile young professionals increase gentrification and displacement? And how might that work? I know a lot of you talked about affordability, but what's the plan there in more depth?
Right. So I think what we're getting at here is an issue that is often talked about when it comes to higher education and wanting to address kind of the, let's call a spade, the racism, and the unequal distribution of resources that is poured into white communities versus other marginalized communities, especially in Chicago, where we know discrimination is very high, and that people kind of self-select into their own cultural neighborhoods, right? We cannot purely expect for this program, much like we can't purely expect for higher education, to fix everything. It is not a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. However, in partnering with the City of Chicago and other entities within the City of Chicago, the expectation is that we can kind of help address that issue, right? We can talk about, especially when it comes to Black folks in Chicago, we know for young Black politicos that Chicago tends to be a small place. You know one person, you know everybody. You tap into the network. And so this is an organized opportunity, for instance, for a partnership with ongoing organizations to kind of, instead of just, I'm going to run into you happenstance at, whatever event we end up showing up at, now we have planned programming, right? And so we can see this example serving as kind of an offshoot for other populations and other marginalized demographics to kind of address that need.
So another thing that we actually talked about a lot in our group is sometimes to prevent those perceptions, you have to have already that vision of a multicultural community, which is why we were so focused on public amenities, right? Public amenities can be placed into action relatively quickly. So when people are thinking about moving into a neighborhood and they see Black people, brown people, old people, young people, people of different orientations, right? They're going to say that this is what this neighborhood is about. It's very hard to adjust that neighborhood when you bring in those people by also having those Chicago staples, right? The Chicago Park District, the Chicago Public Schools, which have in their mission the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? They're going to be building those amenities with the right thoughts in mind.
So I think we're doing the extension on the 606 from the west side, northwest side, all the way down to Pingtong Park. And it's a cross-section of Chicago. We have how many different ethnic groups, how many different neighborhoods that would encompass. So it would be, as Marlon said, that there are different neighborhoods and we all have tend to go with our own groups, but it would actually be able to connect all of these people seamlessly, like I say, from the northwest side all the way down to Chinatown. So connecting.
We're good.
So I wanted to ask actually a follow-up question on the public amenities side of things. Seen from your proposal, there was a 10% initial increase, let's say, in family housing, but a great need for a lot more amenities to be able to attract those folks. Could you talk a little bit more about how you would plan to finance those public amenities, both in the short term, but also sustainably in the long term?
Sure. So we're mostly leveraging public-private partnerships. For example, for the increased 2 and 3 bedrooms, we're relying on the developers. The market rate right now for a 3-bedroom in the Loop is over $6,000 a month when renting. And so we're hoping that once they see that there's a need for this, that there's a market demand, that they will be eager to supply it. For some of our other proposals, for example, the Chicago Park District, the community center we propose. Right now, the Chicago Park District, if you go and sign up for a ceramics class with them, you're only paying $13 a week. If you go out and take a ceramics class up in Lincoln Park, you're paying $50 a week. We propose that the Chicago Park District use an innovative sliding scale model to increase its revenue. Last year, the Chicago Park District generated $7 million in revenue. We believe that they can easily triple this. Sure, we can still offer some ceramics classes for $13 or for free and low cost with the sliding scale, but there are other families who are clearly willing to pay. Same with the Chicago Park District. They have a marina. They could be offering sailing lessons for hundreds of dollars an hour. Family would pay for that, and we would propose using these funds to generate this new community-centered downtown. So we think there's a lot of innovative ways to leverage the partnerships, the Chicago institutions that already exist.
So there's a question about, I'm going to mix it up a little bit, different topic. So in terms of outdoor dining permits and consideration of the pedestrian zones, has that been, if you looked at that more, this is probably for Team One, but others as well, and building off the traffic concerns and closing off the streets, like what does that look like in terms of getting those permitting?
Since the initiative will be enacted by the city, we should be able to get those permits from the city relatively easily. And we hope to encourage businesses to come and extend the access to those permits and make that process easier so that drawing in businesses will be as easy as possible for us and for them.
We also had a green corridor, Urban Street. So I agree with you 100%. The city does this every year. It's it's an annual event. They have to do sidewalk permits, and even some areas do close down. Some neighborhoods do close down the streets. So I think it's baked in the process now. It's not a new thing. But there was a second part of the question, and I completely forgot about it.
It just had to do with, I think, the issue of traffic as well.
Oh, the traffic. Well, again, that's why we looked at the IDOT's GIS data for average daily traffic. Adams Street is underutilized. It could be shut down, and the traffic could flow onto the other streets without major disruption. And so I think that if anything, the corridor is ripe, and the time is now to do it. As they're doing it in other cities across the world, London and Paris, they have traffic too.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. No, just to speak on our idea, we do know that Michigan Ave is a major corridor for the city. We decided to take a phased approach, starting out with the weekend, so we can pilot those opportunities. Take in some metrics, understand what the community sentiment is about how they're experiencing this new outdoors experience. What we'll do with that is we'll iteratively expand upon that based on the feedback that we have, taking the positive things, double clicking on that, accepting and understanding any of the negative aspects of it, and figuring out how we can work around that. And so again, these are hard, big projects. It's best to be strategic in how you do it. One great example of this is how San Francisco shut down the Great Highway. People were angry until they realized that they had a big community beachfront right there in San Francisco. So it just takes a little bit of experience, people seeing what it is, and then you do it in phases. What they like, you keep. What they don't, you iterate on it, make it better.
And we know this phase implementation works. Going back to our example of the 16th Street Mall in Denver, they've done a block implementation twice, actually. They did a first iteration of revitalization, and that saw good turnout. And then they did a second doing a block, and they're still ongoing. They're in their, I think, between of the 12 blocks, they're in the 8th block of doing the revitalization, and they have not seen a great disruption, even more uptake, as people are getting excited about all the blocks getting revitalized. So we see the same thing in that, and very much prioritizing the off-hour delivery and the emergency rerouting and all of those things that are really important for driving and rerouting traffic in different ways, with specific interests to partnering with our community partners for congestion and those other multimodal access and transportation.
Real quick, I apologize, but I like Ashton's suggestion, right? Your enthusiasm about shutting down the streets was fantastic. And I mentioned that Arlington Heights, we do that annually. They've done a survey recently. The number one thing was shut it down all year now. Not shut it down from May to October. Keep it closed. Have ice sculptures during winter. Have sand. It is, and the two streets there are proportional. I mean, they're major, streets for Arlington Heights, not for Chicago, but it's that excitement that you showed, Ashton. I just wanted.
So I have a slightly somewhat related question. I know your team talked about connectivity in terms of connecting west and south sides, and this question is somewhat related to that, but I think also open to the other teams. And that is, how do you envision really this revitalization or these revitalization projects impacting the trajectory of the south and west side communities themselves where they are?
I'm actually really, really excited about this because so there was some data. There was some data presented by My Block, My Hood, My City, which talked about what young Black people are looking for, and just in general from just my own work in those communities. Right, the biggest opportunity that the downtown has is giving people things to do there. So one of the hardest parts about just in neighborhoods in general, but definitely downtown, is when the young people come there, there's nothing for them to do. It's usually outside their price range. They're usually not local things going on. So what do? They walk around. If they don't have any bathrooms, they sneak into bathrooms. They get into trouble if they don't have anything to do. Right. And so by providing them things to do, they have a reason to go downtown. If it's a sports event, if it's a cooking class, if it's an art class, or if it's just some place where they can go and not be asked to leave, then you're talking about a Chicago downtown that the South and West Side could be let's go downtown and chill.
A key part of ours was also was culture and connection. So to stuff you can do downtown, bringing more of that, and the connectivity piece, especially with the Pedway connecting to the Red Line and Blue Line, and making it easier and safer for people to commute in from those the south and west sides as well, and the metro station. So you can come from the suburbs too.
And I like that last point you made there, because we can't forget about the suburbs. They are part of our ecosystem. And so connecting it through the Riverwalk, right there at the end of the Adams Street, corridor, Green Street, pedestrian corridor, is literally Union Station and Ogilvy. So connecting that, being without using a car, by the way, as well as connecting the northwest sides, the west sides, and the south sides without using a car. I think those are winners. Basically, the external facts of car pollution, of traffic, everything, externalities. That is something that we're going to get rid of if we start using public transit and pedestrians.
Thank you. So on the front end, schools like UIC, my alma mater, is near the west side, right? And so in connecting UIC students who are vastly commuter students, who commute from the south and west sides to employment opportunities. It keeps people in state, right? We know about the Illinois depopulation trends. B, it increases income tax revenue. C, it increases sales tax revenue through the increased foot traffic. D, it also increases the property tax value. And so all of this increased revenue can then be reinvested back into communities like the South Side and the West Side to do what we will with that. I think there are a lot of great local organizations that already have plenty of ideas on how to spend Chicago's money. I don't think that we need to be another kind of voice in that race.
So I do think that answer got a little bit to the spirit of the question. And so I wanted to push the teams on this a little bit, actually, in that it's not necessarily a zero-sum game, but I think there might be some question that, right, we've already invested a lot of money historically in the loop, and there's neighborhoods that have not been invested in. And is this going to take away from that in somehow? How is that going to help those neighborhoods that have not been invested in rise up with the others?
Let you guys all think about it. Well, one thing is that it's. I think we're all talking TIF money, right? TIF money needs to be spent in the TIF district, so that money couldn't be, reallocated. I mean, I guess until if they cancel the TIF district itself. So I think the money is there. The money needs to be invested, and I think investing it wisely is what all of our actually solutions are. And we all have some to varying degrees similar projects, overlapping projects. But so I think that's the essence, is that there is money there available from a TIF district, the LaSalle Street, at least for the west side, the LaSalle Street TIF district. I don't know about the other districts, and that would be could used in that district for eligible projects like infrastructure, and it would be, in my humble opinion, and as an engineer, would be better spent extending the 606 or making a car-less, vehicle-less street would be better than widening a roadway or making another expressway. I mean, we're spending $120 million on the Kennedy Expressway, and I don't know if traffic has been improved. I shouldn't even be saying that as my project. Jeez.
Kind of going back to the role of downtowns, thinking about they're meant to be economic anchors for the whole region. And they hold the loop holds 30% of the city's job overall. A good bit of those jobs are going to be coming from the south and west sides, giving these people economic opportunities that they can take back to spend in their communities. Additionally, the amount of city revenue that will come from our proposal will be invested into the city overall, not just the loop. So it's creating benefits that benefit the overall region rather than just the people who are living along the Cultural Mile or in the loop or nearby.
So going back to TIFs, actually that was one of my main projects in one of my data classes. Most of downtown Chicago pretty much lies in a TIF district. So like my lovely peer here said, the money is there. We just need to invest it. And that's been our main debate. On that end, though, I still believe that investing in young professionals to begin with in a housing network is still the most strategic move. When it comes to how to reinvest those dollars, again, there are already so many different nonprofits whose voices just simply need to be amplified, right? And so when it comes to, the folks in the nonprofit sector, how can we listen to them? I think that Mayor Johnson's Cut the Tape report kind of addresses a little bit of that. But yeah, when it comes to, I think, focusing on not displacing the South and West Side residents, it's again very hard to do within one proposal. One proposal that seeks to do too much doesn't end up doing enough. And yet, still, as long as we have the funds, right, then there can be a conversation that can be had.
And just to add to what all of my colleagues are saying, we talked a lot in our group about cultural shifts, and we talked about the focus on family. But another cultural shift that I think really is important, even as we're talking about the allocation of funds, is this sense that we are Chicago, right? We are not in competition with each other. We should not be in competition with each other. Downtown's gain should not be my loss, right? And so by focusing on the fact that every new innovation or every project that a lot of us are talking about is accessible and designed for every Chicago neighborhood, for every Chicago resident, that's how we disconnect ourselves from that sense that if something happens here, I'm losing out.
So we are just about out of time, so we're going to, if you want to finish off on that one?
One last caveat, investing in downtown, obviously, I think any of our great proposals would end up increasing property tax value, right? And most Chicagoans care about property taxes. Illinois is a property tax state. And so if we can end up kind of moving that burden from off of local residents, I think we'll all be a lot happier.
All right, so I think we have time for one more question, which means I will not have got to every question that was submitted, so apologies if I did not get to yours. It was not on purpose, don't blame me. So I wanted to, an early one that was submitted, and it's a bit of a fun one, I think, so we'll end on this one. A gentleman said he just moved to the Loop, and he's shocked at how Grant Park lacks a single pedestrian bridge to the lakeshore. So while many roads obviously cut through the park, and we all know Lakeshore Drive. So how can we turn this space into a new Central Park of sorts? It's a little off topic, but.
So, this is not at all the topic of our proposal whatsoever. However, I'm from New York City, and the FDR drive that goes around the loop of Manhattan actually goes underneath a lot of the riverfront on the east side. And so it goes underneath like Rockefeller University. It goes underneath the park that's at the bottom, the bottom tip of Manhattan. And so if the city really wanted to commit to something like this, it could just be burying the riverfront drive-through and have it be like a subterranean drive as opposed to going through the park and then just reclaiming that space and giving it back to people. But again, not our project. So
I do recall a long time ago there was an idea to put a pedestrian bridge at Buckingham Fountain across to Queens Point or Queens Landing, right on the lake. And the big issues were grades, elevation. So you can sink it Lakeshore Drive, you can, but you will have a lot of water in there if it floods, and because the lake would be higher. But it would be good. It's a good idea, good engineering challenge. I like it. But I know that there's been a lot of thoughts about that. But maybe the next one is that we close Lakeshore Drive and make that a big pedestrian area too. So,
kind of building on the initial part of our proposal, we believe that by introducing more pedestrian spaces will only drive more demand and can get more support behind something like closing in the very long future, but closing Lakeshore Drive or creating DuSable Lakeshore Drive, closing that or creating, or even having a pedestrian walk through that could gain enough support. I think we first have to start small and do things like block off Michigan Avenue, popular corridors that people are already using, and let them see what vibrancy is brought by having more pedestrian spaces. Also could be an expansion for the Pedway if we get enough money there, and it could expand to the lakefront, making it even more connective.
I like you connecting it back to your proposal. That was well done. Yeah. All right, I think we're done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for facilitating a great Q&A. Last year it was toll Lakeshore Drive, and now we want to close Lakeshore Drive. So we'll leave it there for now. So while the judges are settling back in, and before we actually make the announcement, we do want to say thanks to all the people who helped make this happen. First and foremost, thanks to all of our judges for all of the time and effort that you put into to hearing these proposals and providing such wonderful feedback. Thank you so much. A couple special thanks. One to David Wells, who you'll hear from just in just a second. Harris Council member, and of course, he's provided us the seed money to get this idea off the ground, and we certainly appreciate his ongoing support. We also want to thank King Harris. King was here a little bit earlier. He had to take off for an event downtown. Of course, King, the namesake of the Harris School. This was his idea back in the day, and so it's wonderful to see it continue to come to life. A couple other thank yous real quick. I mentioned our mentors. We had several of them, again, all of them alums. Very quickly, I want to name them just so everybody gets the recognition. Audrey Bear, Andres Morozo, Matt Bruce, Irene Burke, Asia Kennedy, Noor Shabir, Nick Epstein, Rita Jefferson, Ashley Gabrich, Caleb Herod, Christine Cobb, Louis McCravich, Andrew Rank, Adrian Rodriguez, Molly Shanley, Matt Shomo, Molly Smith, and Dan Tollefson. Thank you to all of our mentors. As you can see, the participants appreciated their help very much. Also, thanks to our first round judges, Lillian Bowie, Miley Garcia, Andrew Herrera, Rich Kong, Anna Lee, Jody Winnett, and Lee Zachos. Again, all of them Harris alums who donated a lot of time going through these proposals, so thank you to them. As mentioned, we had several great seminar presenters. They deserve some recognition too. Tushar Consul from the Pew Research Foundation, Julia Bauer and Farhad Omir from the National League of Cities, our own Professor Jens Ludwig from the Hare School and the Chicago Crime Lab, from Cook County Assessor's Office, Nicole Jardine, and of course the assessor himself, Fritz Kagi, Mike Potter from Riverside Investment and Development, and Dawid Scully from the City of Chicago Department of Planning and Development. And last but not least, to all the staff here at Harris and Mansueto for making this happen. We want to give a special thanks to them for all of their efforts. From the Harris Events team, Jody Daly, Sarah Jane Chrysler, from our communications and marketing team, Bernice Barrero, Sue Burke, Tyler McGoffey, Billy Morgan, Carrie O'Mara, Eric Steltenpohl, and Dave Stone. The Mansueto staff who have been helping us out, Amy Giles, Heidi Lee, Brian Wilson, and of course, Dean Ethan Blado de Mesquita, as always, for all of your support. And anyone else who I'm forgetting, thank you to everyone who helped make this wonderful event come to life. So thank you for that. And so without further ado, the moment of truth, I'll invite David Wells to announce our winner.
Thanks, Justin. I have the honor and pleasure of announcing the winner. But before I do that, I think Justin thanked everyone except maybe the 17 teams that gave all their time and the four finalist teams. So on behalf of the judges, we took our job seriously because you did too. It was very clear. The quality of the presentations was very high. So, and having been here last year and listened to the pension, and now listening to this one, it's great. The vision of these prizes is actually to inspire you who are taking statistics, microecon, urban planning, municipal finance, and kind of trying to bring that a little more to life. So hopefully it did for you. Without further ado, the judges have selected Team 1 as our winner this year. Congratulations.
Or not. It's up to you.
First of all, thank you so much to the judges. We have put in so much work, and we've gotten so much help along the way, and just so grateful. Thanks again to our mentor, Dan, very, very helpful. A professor of ours, Samir Mayakar, very, very helpful. And thanks for appreciating our ideas, the opportunity, and thanks for making the challenge. So, yeah, thanks everybody. Also, thanks to my amazing team. We're pretty awesome, so thanks. I don't know.
Congratulations to Team 1. Thank you again, judges. All the participants, please stick around. Judges, please stick around for pictures and for some conversation. Otherwise, thank you all for coming out. Please enjoy the reception.